Horses are very beautiful animals and have such a visual versatility to them because of how they've been used in various paintings, whether it's been monarch paintings, paintings of war, and all the way to more modern representation of horses. We find that horses, obviously within the modern era, have been utilized even in genres of fantasy or natural landscapes. However, there are many ways to utilize a horse, and understanding how to draw this particular animal is really good for your drawing repertoire and a great visual addition to many artwork ideas. So with that being said, hey guys, my name is Matt. Welcome to another video by artincontext.org, where we explore various art related topics, and in today's tutorial we will be breaking down the process of how to draw a horse. We will be using some very simple materials, as this tutorial does cover a very basic approach to understanding just the anatomy and scale and shape of various features on a horse drawing. In this tutorial we will be looking at how we can draw a horse through a few simple steps. This tutorial will help us develop a simple horse sketch into a refined and beautiful horse drawing. We will then slowly tweak and edit those shapes, and with some detail and shading slowly refine our horse drawing. So with that being said, the way in which we're going to start is by simply drawing the basic outline of the horse. Now you can look at some reference images as you follow through these steps, but what we're going to do is we're going to start with a very light pencil sketch to scale and place the different features of the horse, working with the basic shapes. So we want to start with the head because this is going to establish the scale and how large the other features should be in relation to the head. The head tends to be slightly smaller than the neck, and the neck is slightly longer than the head and flows into the chest area of the horse. The legs seem quite slim near the cannon bones, but are quite large in the shoulder and hip areas as they connect to the body. But as we continue, consider also looking at a diagrammatical representation of a horse to understand certain anatomical features. Now the legs are quite interesting because of how they get narrower near the lower section, so you want to make sure that the leg is quite large in the hips and shoulder area, but are thinner near the forearm, knee, chestnut and cannon bone. With the legs you can play around with the motion and how you would like the pose of the horse to appear. Near the knee area there is really good mobility in the horse, so allowing for the leg to basically bend back and forth for leaping, galloping and general movement. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to lightly erase this horse sketch once we have established a very general outline, and from here this is going to allow us to kind of work with some ghost lines to then navigate the placement of features in a more refined manner. Now we're going to then move on to lightly sketching these details of the horse. So once we have lightly erased the horse drawing, we can now use the ghost lines to assist us in the drawing of the features. Now this is where we work with a light sketch of the horse's features, starting with the head. We do want to make sure that as we kind of start with the head, the eyes of the horse are generally placed quite higher on the face. As we work on the eyes, we will find that naturally the horse does have eyelids, but as we kind of continue refining the face, we do want to make sure that the face does have that extending kind of long shape to it. The head of the horse is also slightly smaller than the neck, so the neck is quite long and flows into the chest area quite seamlessly. The chest is quite large and muscular, and we want to use some line work as a means of basically defining the muscular segments or striations that run from the neck to the chest. Horses tend to be quite muscular in general, so because of how active they are, their species tend to really develop a muscular tone within their various features. This will create moments of indentations and protrusions and striations, which we really want to emphasize, and this can just really enhance our horse drawing, ultimately giving it a more realistic effect. As we draw the legs of the horse, we will find that there are subtle shifts in width along the lower section of the horse. This is generally near the knee area, and as the leg extends into the lower and thinner cannon bone, from there the hooves get slightly thicker and rounder. We also want to make sure we capture the joints and shape of the legs as best we can. As we start sketching the body of the horse, we can also start to give it a slightly rounded stomach. Now horses do kind of have this bulbous type of shape to their stomach. Horses are quite heavy, so their stomach tends to basically round out a bit because of that weight. The hind legs of the horse, similar to the front legs, have a very narrow lower section that is quite thin in comparison to the upper thigh. But as we continue, the horse's fetlock is quite a thick joint, with the hooves being quite rounded, and the hooves connect to the fetlock with a narrow bone. So you do want to make sure you take your time going through all these aspects of the horse. The anatomical nature of its bone structure throughout the legs is very unique, so again just consider looking at some diagrammatical references of a horse to assist you in this drawing process. Again, keep your sketch light at this point, but we can also start to consider how shadowing will form along these various features. Again, shadowing is a result of an interaction of a three-dimensional structure with light. So that interaction between that structure and light is going to cause shadows, and this is where we want to start thinking about the protrusions and indentations and how shadows will inevitably be present along those surface areas. Now, using shading to create depth in the drawing is going to give the horse a little bit more three-dimensionality, so try to consider a single point from which the light source is being present. This means that if the light source is coming from one side, the shadows will then be predominantly on the opposite side. We can also start to consider how the mane will flow if the horse is in motion. So that is kind of the hair-like structure along the top section of the horse. And we do want to try and think about how the movement of the mane kind of falls depending on the movements in your horse and how it is portrayed through your drawing. Now, once we have done that, we're going to start lightly erasing the horse sketch one last time. Again, guys, there are many ways to approach a horse drawing. In this case, we are kind of working with this layering process. We build up these light sketches and then erase them to kind of use the previous light sketch as a means of navigating more refined details. But otherwise, once we have added some refined sketching, we then want to lightly erase the drawing a second time. And this is where we can now start to add some darker shading and details to our horse drawing. So this is where we can start to use some of our darker pencils or tools to add some contrast to the features. So once again, we're going to start with the face, try to work with the ghost lines. We do want to make sure we have these refined subtle shadows and shading to bring more depth to the animal. Now, as we shade in the face, you do want to consider how the bottom of the neck would have more shadowing. This is where we can add in more shading to emphasize these shadows. We can do so with the muscles or any features that protrude from beneath the skin. We can also start to add some darker line work to the mane of the horse. The hair of the horse is generally thick and coarse, which means we want to make these lines quite dark and thick. We also want to make sure that the hair flows in very natural and organic motion. So naturally, we do want to work with these curved lines to suggest that type of quality. You can also play around with coloration. For instance, a lot of horses have darkened legs near the lower section of their legs. This is very popular within Mustangs and wild horses. So you can, once again, kind of consider what kind of horse you would like to draw and then utilize those kinds of color schemes and tonal variations to assist you in your representation of a horse. It is really important for us to be very conscious of the horse's muscular structure, as this creates a lot of lines and shadowing that run through the chest area and also throughout the entire body. We can also add shading near the underbelly area of the horse. Again, shadowing will be much darker in the areas that are least exposed to the light source, such as the underbelly and any areas lower in the horse drawing. Now, we also want to make sure we take our time as we go through the entire drawing of our horse, slowly adding in these refined lines, working with line work, some shading that will define the bones and muscle qualities within the horse. But otherwise, then we can start to really refine this drawing furthermore by adding darker shading and detail to our horse drawing. So this is where we can start to use some of our darkest pencils or tools to add some contrast to these features and emphasize those gradient shifts within the shadow formations along the various features of the horse. Starting with the face again, try to work with these ghost lines, and we want to refine the subtle shadows and shading to bring more depth to the horse drawing. But otherwise, we can also start to add some dark line work to the mane of the horse. The hair of the horse is generally thick and coarse, once again, which means we really want to make sure we make those lines dark. You can also play around with the coloration, but as we continue with this process, we can then start to refine and contextualize the horse drawing once we have really added those darker details. Now that we have worked on some darker shading, we can start to go over that shading where it's necessary or erase any unnecessary details. And this is where we can also start to work in some more features if need be, such as a tail, to give more context to the horse. We can also start to work on some marks around the horse to suggest that it is in a field or some sort of space. However, this is more focused on just the general aspects, anatomical features, and the assembly of how to kind of represent a horse. In this case, a wild horse or Mustang type of horse species. But otherwise, try taking your time with this last stage to work in those layers of shading to darken certain areas or to simply fix any areas in the drawing. Take your time with refining the drawing and attending to all features once more until you have completed your drawing. And once you feel that you have worked in all the details and shadows, then we are officially done. And this is a general process, guys, of how to approach a horse drawing. Again, some key things to think about is you always want to start from simple shapes and then slowly refine them. Again, guys, the key concepts to think about here is to build up your horse from simple very basic shapes where you kind of establish the various features and place them together, and then you can slowly erase that, keeping your sketch light, keep refining it until you get to a point where you're working these very detailed lines and kind of moments of shadow and shading to represent the features as best as you can. Working with the layering process gives us the opportunity to really focus on one feature at a time and making sure that we scale and kind of place them alongside one another in a way that seems proportionally correct. But otherwise, guys, if you are interested in us going into more depth into this particular type of subject matter with color theory and color values, please do let us know in the comment section below, or if you are interested in similar or related topics on how to draw other animals. But otherwise, guys, this is a very simple process with very simple tools, so you can use these steps to assist you in your own drawing of a horse, your own drawing process, and you can deviate from them. But kind of working with a very basic breakdown on how to assemble a horse is a great way to start, and from there you can kind of play around with your own way of representing various features. But otherwise, guys, thanks again for tuning in. If you did like this video, please like and subscribe. That helps us to grow the channel, which enables us to make more art related content to share with you guys, which we love to do. But once again, thanks for tuning in. That is it from me today. Until next time, see you in the next video. Cheers.